Hello, fellow fantasy sports fans. Welcome to MFSN, the Hub's fantasy football waiver wire show. We're so excited to be here. It is week 1 of the NFL season is almost in the books. Waiver wire week 1 begins now. I'm here as always with Kasey, Vlad to the Bone, Scheinvold, and Ross the Boss.
Hi, everybody. I'm Ross the Boss, and I'm here to talk waiver wire week 1. Week 1 with you. It's been a crazy weekend of football. A lot of football I watched, guys. I watched like 7-8 hours of football. I had to take a break eventually. I was like dramatized by watching television for so long. But it was an unbelievable weekend. I mean, I was watching the Red Zone. That's what Ross the Boss does. And there were 3 games in overtime at the same time when I was watching Red Zone, which is craziness. You know, it was just, and one game became a tie, which that's not good. But long story short, I mean, it was a great weekend. There's a lot of waiver wire pickups that I love this week. And I know a lot of players did not produce how they should have this week, but don't worry, guys. It's only week 1. And today I call it the most dramatized day in fantasy football because everybody gets so worried when their player does not do well the first week. There's
a lot of big overreactions. I mean, one of them is that if you have the Bengals kicker, you cut him immediately.
I'm a Bengal
that's probably
fan.
not an overreaction.
And you being a psychologist, both you guys are leading the field in therapy. I mean, what's your take on when people get so depressed about fantasy football? Like, what would you tell your client if they're laying on the couch and they're saying, "Listen, I'm so upset about my team. What can I do? I'm suicidal." What would your whole thing be?
If they're suicidal after fantasy football games, I don't think the main issue is fantasy football. We'd have to.
Well, and that's exactly right to the point. But they think it is, and so what I advise them is if you think the main problem is fantasy football, you must immediately go make a good trade. It has to happen right away.
Or drop the one who's giving you the most stress.
Listen, there are times where I'm like, get this player off my team at all costs, which, by the way, not a good idea.
Oh, there are certain players I won't own.
Do not offer trades while angry. Yes, don't offer trades while angry.
I want to rewind a little bit. We did a live draft on our network a couple weeks ago. And Mr. Dr. Dan Ratner was very upset. He drafted the running back of Detroit.
I knew this was going to come up.
This guy was suicidal. I mean, he was like
it's as angry as you'll see Dr. Dan.
It was a trigger. I mean, it really was a trigger. And he was like all upset for like the whole draft. You guys can rewatch it. And then Swift went out there. He outperformed Henry. He outperformed CMC. He outperformed everybody. I mean, except maybe Taylor. Maybe that's it in the first round. But this guy was a beast. He was unbelievable, and he'll just get better because Jamal Williams is not going to have 2 touchdowns.
Right, and Jamal Williams poached 2 touchdowns, I think, from him too.
2 touchdowns.
Listen,
that's not going to happen in every game. I mean, Swift is a beast, and thank God he didn't trade him.
But to defend Dan a little bit, he said, "I hope I'm proven very wrong by my."
I know, but you guys brought up the Bengals thing. I was bringing up Swift.
But it's week 1. We're talking about overreactions. Are we saying DeAndre Swift being a beast is an overreaction or fact?
Well, not only that, but it's interesting.
I don't
know. Ross was trying to clap back about the Bengals by telling me that my running back is awesome. I appreciate it.
He had an awesome. I mean, for somebody that was so depressed and almost suicidal, now Now he looks like a genius.
Yeah. This guy. Well, I don't look like a genius because I auto-drafted him, but I'll tell you what this does prove. What this proves is my theory that if I just left well enough alone and let auto-draft handle things and didn't adjust my roster, I would be much better off. And this is proof of that. So DeAndre Swift was great. Now, guys, let's get to the waiver wire, the players that you can pick up. Just so you guys know, the standard is 60% and below in Yahoo. That's just how we measure it. And let's go to QBs. We're going to do position by position. Jump in with the QBs that you think are the best pickup. Let's start with just one. Kasey, who would you start with?
Well, I don't think there's any on the waiver wire right now who are probably season-long studs, right? But if I'm looking at somebody, let's say I have Dak Prescott, right? Out 6 to 8 weeks, all of a sudden I need a plan B and I need to get somebody off the wire. Carson Wentz for the Washington Commanders. Remember last year for the Colts, for the first 8 to 10 weeks, he was a really good fantasy quarterback. Then he struggled at the end. This past week, he threw 4 touchdowns for the Commanders. And next week, he gets the Detroit Lions, who we just saw the Philadelphia Eagles put 38 points up against and move the ball at will against them. He's got 2 really good receivers. So to me, Carson Wentz would be the guy I would want to stream next week if I needed somebody because my other quarterback was injured or going into a really tough matchup.
Ross, how about you?
I disagree with Kasey Scheinfeld. I'm taking Matt Ryan of the Colts. They play in Jacksonville. That defense for Jacksonville is embarrassing. Their DBs get burned more than toast. It's a horrible defense there in Jacksonville. It's bad. I like Matt Ryan. I feel he'll have like 3 or 4 touchdowns there, and I think he'll be a top 10 quarterback next week. That's my pickup to take over Dak Prescott's big empty spot.
And here's my argument to that. They have Jonathan Taylor. They're going against a bad defense. They're not going to have to throw the ball that much. The Commanders are going against the Lions, who just put up 35 points, and we just talked about one of their studs in DeAndre Swift. I just think the game plan and the potential for a higher scoring game suits Carson Wentz better than it does Matt Ryan in the matchup next week.
All right, so I'm going to add one quarterback to the list. Marcus Mariota of Atlanta. He ran for 72 yards and a touchdown. So if the guy does a whole lot of anything through the air and he's running like that, he could really be valuable.
In L.A., Dr. Dan Radner, in L.A. against the Rams, world champions.
Well, okay, that's true. But that means he's going to be throwing the ball a lot. It's interesting. So far, Ross, it seems like game script, not much of a concern for you. But I think Atlanta's going to be throwing the ball all the time. He's going to be scrambling around all the time.
I don't know. Did you see Peterson? Did you see what Peterson did running the ball? I mean, he's one of the biggest surprises in fantasy last. I mean,
I assume
were not
you mean
drafting him over
I assume
100
you mean-
yards.
I assume you mean
rushing.
Cordarrelle Patterson.
Okay, I'm just making
Cordell
sure.
Patterson over 100 yards rushing. I mean, no one expected that. That was one of the big surprises. Ross the Boss we'll talk about tomorrow on his fantasy show.
It's true. Now, when you said Peterson, it made it sound like you were talking about Adrian Peterson. So I was looking
did
to be
not-
like,
he got knocked
Did Ross
out.
take
You see that
LSD
by by Bell? He got knocked out in a boxing match this weekend.
Oh, was that what that was? I would like to put in a plug for one more quarterback while we're still here, and that's Jameis Winston in New Orleans.
Tell me why.
Why? Because he likes to air it out. He's got good receivers. You know, Taysom Hill runs the Wildcat for him, and he's going to take some of the goal line stuff, so you're not going to get rushing yards out of Jameis Winston. But this is a guy who isn't afraid to try to make the big play and to try to throw for big yards. You're going to live with some interceptions here and there, but if he's giving you 3 or 4 touchdowns, I think you'll take the trade.
Okay, I'm going to add one more. Ryan Tannehill. This is the one guy on the wire. He's only 18% rostered. He's the one guy on the wire who could consistently be a starting quarterback. Is that going to happen? I don't love the weapons he has, so I'm not in love with that, but he's done it before. So if you're in a pinch, if you're a Dak Prescott owner and you're wondering who to take a chance on for the long term, I'd probably go Tannehill myself. Guys, let's move to running back.
I like Jared Goff. I think he's going to be a huge game at home against the Commanders.
This is an age-old philosophy thing.
Yeah.
Ross is always looking at the next game, which is not a bad thing to do. I'm not saying that's bad, but I'm always looking at the long view, and that is why I lose. It's kind of true. Actually, I'm always looking for those, and that's good for baseball or maybe even basketball. But for football or head-to-head stuff, you got to get on the week-to-week stuff. So, Ross, you keep guiding us in that way. Running backs, guys. Who is at the top of your list, the top ad? It's 60% and under. So we'll start with you, Ross.
So I love this guy, and don't tell me you're going to if you have him on your team, don't say, oh, he got all those yards because they were up by so many points and it was just garbage time. Isaiah Pacheco of the Kansas City Chiefs. I mean, this guy's the real deal. He'll be the starting running back by week 5 or 6. This guy's great. I saw McKenzie was pushing on Andy Reid during the fourth quarter saying, Coach, let me in. And Reid said, get the hell away from me. This guy's playing. He had over 60 yards rushing. He led his team in rushing, and he had a touchdown. I know they were blowing the team out. I know it was didn't matter, but still, they have hope for this guy. And I feel this guy's going to be in there a lot during the midseason and the final games. I love this guy. And he's somebody you should pick up right now because he's not going to be available very soon.
Yeah, I agree that Pacheco's played great, and he might end up being a really prominent feature in that backfield. The problem is if you're in a PPR league, I think you have to knock him down a few because he's not the pass catching back. That's going to be Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who caught a couple touchdowns in that game. But I agree, he's a great pickup. And if you have Helaire, I think you have to have him as the handcuff there. But I think one of the biggest pickups this week is going to be a direct result of probably the biggest swing and miss of fantasy prognosticators in the preseason. Rex Burkhead for the for the Texans had 14 carries and 8 targets in the passing game when everybody thought Dameon Pierce, this rookie, was handed the bell cow role for the Texans. And then when it mattered, 71% of the plays, Burkhead was in the backfield, Pierce for only 29%. I mean, and he's a pass catching back. So I just think Rex Burkhead, if he can stay healthy, because we've seen what he's done in New England in the past. This guy has been a contributor fantasy wise. I think he might be the most talked about running back going into the next week.
It's interesting too. I mean, how old is Rex Burkhead?
I have no idea. I can look.
I think he's like 33. Check it out.
Kasey Scheinfeld, check it out. Another running back.
Yeah. Right.
Listen, I just got information from our producer Greg.
He's 32 years old.
Elijah Mitchell of the 49ers is not going to play for at least 6 weeks. He's out.
This is the part I was going to look at. The 49ers backfield. Well, listen, I mean, Kyle Shanahan knows how to produce great running backs. When Mitchell goes down, whoever's getting the bulk of the carries in San Francisco is going to be more valuable than almost anybody. Pacheco could be hugely valuable, but the passing down stuff does put a damper on it. At the same time, if you're averaging 5 yards a carry in a big-time offense like that and you're that electric, Pacheco probably would be my number one pickup. Interestingly, James Robinson is 59% rostered also, and he has a clear role in the offense, and he's done it before. So that's going to go up. But if I had to take a chance on one guy for the next couple of weeks to carry people, to me, it's Jeff Wilson. I understand people could say, no, it's going to be Davis Prince in the long run. I don't think that's going to happen next week. I think Jeff Wilson is the one to go for a couple of weeks here. And that's when Mitchell's out. What do you guys think about that?
I love it. I like Jeff Wilson. I'll be trying to get him on my team. I think he's a streamer. I mean, I don't know how long. Mitchell should be out 4 to 5 weeks, maybe. But Wilson's going to carry the ball. He'll get 20 carries a game. It should be. I mean, the 49ers looked awful. I mean, I watched that game. They were bad. I mean, they lost to the Bears, and the Bears supposed to be the worst team in the National Football League. And the 49ers, people were predicting them to win the Super Bowl. I mean, what does that tell you? I mean, again, Lance looked horrible. Lance, if I had Lance as my quarterback, I'll be waiving him this week, just so you know, Kasey Scheinfeld. He'd be off my team, off that performance. Horrible. Horrible.
Listen,
might be an overreaction.
I'm always rooting for these guys, whoever they are. I want them all to do well. But Trey Lance always, to me, felt like, why are we counting him as if he's this elite quarterback?
Already, yeah. I bet Jimmy Garoppolo is probably just sitting on the bench, just laughing.
Well, Trey Lance made a mistake. You know what the mistake? Well, he did. Shanahan did. He should have played a lot more time during the preseason. He played I think 1 or 2 games. And Josh Fields of the Bears, he played every game, and it showed that he was ready to play. I mean, Fields played a good game. First half he was horrible. Second half he was a lot better, and he showed why the preseason helped him. And that's why the young players, Trevor Lawrence, people like you should be playing every chance you can. Not every quarter, but at least a half every time you get the chance to, because you need the help.
Let me ask you guys this. What do you think about Dontrell Hilliard of Tennessee? I mean, his numbers are crazy. They don't add up to somebody who's going to have a clear, great role. But I'm curious what you guys think about him as a waiver wire pickup.
Derrick Henry is in that backfield, and it's hard to see as long as Derrick Henry stays healthy.
No. You're hedging on an injury if you're getting Dontrell Hilliard.
But Dontrell Hilliard is, I guess, going to be the third down back. I think maybe they're thinking we're going to try to limit Henry's reps so we can keep him healthy throughout the year and not wear him down by the end of the season. And if that's the case, I mean, Tannehill didn't throw the ball downfield all that much in the last game. So if he's looking at checkdowns, then all of a sudden you got, Austin Hooper and Hilliard are pretty viable options from a fantasy perspective.
Well, I have 2 guys that I definitely would rank ahead of him. I just wanted to get your thoughts on it. But Ross, who else do you have?
This guy's 49%, and he'll be back by week 5. I mean, he's already like running on the treadmill. That's what his coach said. Is Brian Robinson, the rookie running back from Alabama that plays for the Commanders. If he is as good as they say he is, and the coach is very excited about him, he'll share reps at least with Gibson. I mean, Gibson had a great game last week, but if Robinson comes back, if you can stash him on your team, if there's an IR place in your team so you can stash him, pick him up now and stash him, because I think this guy is going to be worth something, especially later in the year when he's 100% ready to roll.
Could not agree more, Ross. He was the next guy that I was going to talk about, because this is one of those players, and I told you I'm always building for the long term. That's something where I see massive value. He could be a starting running back. I mean, Antonio Gibson, there was a question as to whether he would even start as a kick returner before Brian Robinson got hurt. So, got hurt. He got shot. That's a big, big difference.
Got shot twice.
I'm sure it hurt though.
Got shot twice, but one in the buttocks.
He's gonna be a very valuable and useful player. So he's another guy that I was definitely looking at. Another guy that I like a lot is Khalil Herbert of Chicago. He already got 9 carries. He got a touchdown. He's involved, and it's not like Montgomery has a total stranglehold on that offense. I wouldn't say. I mean, he did last year in terms of the carries. It just doesn't look like it's going to be that way. Go ahead, Case.
Well, I was going to say, one of the other big names or big rookie names this preseason in the backfield was James Cook in Buffalo. But against the Rams, he didn't see the field that much. And in fact, Zach Moss, who's only 6% owned, everybody thought he was going to get cut actually after the preseason, had 6 targets in the passing game for 21 yards. And so I'm not saying that he's a must add, but it seems like for right now, he's going to be the third down back and get some of the goal line carries, because he also had 6 carries for 15 yards. And that Buffalo backfield is so murky. He's another one I would keep an eye on. And then on the injury front, we talked about obviously Elijah Mitchell, and we talked about Dak Prescott, but Najee Harris in the Pittsburgh game also rolled his ankle, and there's talk of him being at least questionable going into next week. But I'm not sure who the backup is going to be. Jaylen Warren came in and had 3 carries after he went out. I think he fumbled in one of his carries. I'm not sure. But he also had 1 target. He didn't lose it, but I think he fumbled. And then there's Benny Snell Jr., who last year was kind of the primary backup. So that's another backfield I would keep an eye on, because Pittsburgh running backs tend to be pretty successful.
I agree. I mean, the news I just got it in my ear from our producer, Greg, just told me that according to Tomlin, the coach of Pittsburgh, Harris is going to be fine. That's what his exact words. He'll be fine and ready to roll on next week. So I think he'll play.
But everybody knows how twisted ankles or sprained ankles go. I agree. And how slow they are to.
But Warren and Snell, they'll probably, if he's not playing, I think they'll probably share snaps. I think they'll go back and forth and just.
Yeah, so that's something I would watch the Pittsburgh kind of beat writers on Twitter or whatever and see what they're saying, who's getting the primary first team reps.
I'm just going to throw this out, though. I mean, if you're trying to analyze it, Snell's been there a while, and he just has never gotten the reps or the opportunity.
Yeah, and really. Anthony McFarland last year was actually a pretty good backup, too. So it's
and
murky.
They cut McFarland having brought in Warren. I think Warren is clearly the guy. I think he's a pretty strong priority ad if you think that Harris is going to be.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see what's happening by Friday.
Especially if you own Najee Harris.
Well, then
another first round. Well, I mean, think about it. Najee Harris, first rounder. CMC, a first rounder. Henry, a first rounder. And also Cook, a first rounder. All busts this week.
That's right. And DeAndre Swift, accidental second rounder, looking good.
I'll take it. And somebody was crying himself to sleep when he drafted him. We won't talk about who that is.
Listen, I get so many things wrong in fantasy football that that was a good sign. I should have known. All right, guys, let's move to wide receiver. We have our cover boy on this. Baltimore Ravens wide receiver. I'm not going to say his name. I'm going to throw it to Ross because this is
Kasey. It was Casey's idea.
Oh, okay, fine.
Tell us why we should pick him up.
All right, Kasey, you throw it to Ross to have him pronounce.
That's right. It's Devin Duvernay is the number 2 wide receiver, it seems like right now for Lamar Jackson after Rashad Bateman. He only got 4 targets, so I'm not saying he's a priority ad right now. We put him on the cover because he had 2 touchdowns, so he had a bunch of fantasy points, 54 yards and 2 touchdowns on 4 receptions. But Mark Andrews didn't have a great game. Rashad Bateman caught a touchdown. He's going to be great, but he needs another option. And, he seems to have good chemistry right now and able to find space for Lamar Jackson to find him. So if Lamar Jackson is as good as we all think he is, he can keep, especially if their backfield is as terrible as it is with Dobbins still injured and God, who else do they even have back?
Mike Davis, who I picked up in one of my leagues. It was one of my bombs.
And Kenyon Drake, I think, was actually the leading rusher, which was worse.
Just embarrassing.
So they're going to need to throw the ball until Dobbins is healthy. And if Duvernay has a good chemistry with him, it's not a bad pickup to watch.
Ross, what do you think of Duvernay?
I like Duvernay. I mean, he looked great. Bateman looked good. I mean, the receiving core for Baltimore, people were down on it beginning of the season. I mean, Duvernay's somebody that was drafted in some of my leagues, and some people, they never drafted him. I drafted him, I think, in one of my best ball leagues. But I mean, I think he's obviously his favorite target. I mean, I feel.
He was a pretty high prospect when he first came in. So this guy I actually think he is a priority pickup. It's just a gut feeling that I think he's going to have not only a major role in the offense, I actually think he could lead that team in receiving besides Andrews. Andrews will be ahead of him, I would guess. But he's got a major role. I mean, it's not like Bateman is super well established there. It was Hollywood Brown who was leading that receiving core. Okay, I'm going to nominate one other guy, and I'm kind of looking at long term. So, like, as always. So I could look at the short term and be like, well, Jarvis Landry had a big role.
Tell me about his stats real quick. Tell me, he's a top 10 receiver this week, Mr. Landry.
Yes, but I don't expect it to last for multiple reasons, including injury history. The guy that I like is Jahan Dotson. I think this guy's role is going to grow. That's right, Penn State. Kasey went to Penn State, so he knows. But Jahan Dotson looks to me like he's already got an early role, and I think he's the kind of rookie receiver who can make an impact because of the kind of route running he's got, his intelligence. He's a guy who I could see making a big splash earlier, whereas a guy like George Pickens, who's going to be, I think, a much more productive receiver long-term, explosive, he's not going to arrive for a while. And that's partly because the Steelers are going to bring him along slowly, whereas Dotson, I think, is going to get a role early. Ross, what do you think?
I'll take the other receiver in Washington, Curtis Samuel. 11 targets on Sunday. 11 targets, 8 receptions, touchdown, 55 yards. This guy clearly is Wentz's one of his favorite. Well, I think he's his favorite receiver. He had a great game. He'll keep on getting the targets. Wentz is going to have a good season. I mean, we talked about it earlier, but Curtis Samuel, I think, is a great wide receiver 3, I would say, if I had to draft him right now. But I think right now, if you need a wide receiver and there's a lot of help and receiver help you need, I'm sure everybody needs it. Is Justin Jefferson, is he still available?
Justin Jefferson is available in one-team leagues.
Right.
No, actually, I think he's taken.
No, he's even taken in those.
So let's just discuss receivers real quick. I mean, the top 3 receivers, the top tier guys, Chase, Jefferson, and Coop, they all performed where they supposed to, which is amazing. I mean, usually there's always one guy that kind of fails. Even Adams had a good game. So, I mean, it shows you like why wide receivers are more of a priority now than running backs. I mean, when you're drafting, everybody says, well, I got to take a running back. No, you don't. I mean, the wide receivers, especially the top tier guys, these guys are money almost every week. I mean, I don't know if you watched Coop, everybody, unbelievable. And then Chase and then Jefferson. I mean, Jefferson, I think, is going to be the leading receiver this year. What do you guys think?
Oh, I agree.
I think he's the betting favorite I think he's one of the betting favorites for like offensive player of the year, not just to lead the league in receiving yards.
Yeah, I agree with that. I also agree with the concept. Sorry, go ahead. I interrupted.
No, you're right. I was going to say the same thing. We agree with the concept that running backs are becoming more predictable and reliable wide receivers are becoming more predictable and reliable than running backs in a lot of ways in those early rounds to project, because you do have weeks where the game plan changes or you have just bad offensive lines, and like Derrick Henry, Christian McCaffrey, you named them all. They all laid eggs in the first week for the most part. Maybe not their fault, but every wide receiver who is predicted, I think, in the first round or first 2 rounds, put up above average, if not excellent numbers.
I mean, I'm also finding that it seems rookie wide receivers are making a bigger impact sooner than they used to. I don't know if I'm right about that, but it does seem that way. So I also have my eye on guys like Treylon Burks or Garrett Wilson. These guys can come in really fast. Pickens actually, to me, is the most talented of the bunch, but he's going to come along the slowest because he's in the Steelers. But I think all of these rookie guys, you're not probably going to get a huge impact and want to start them in the next couple weeks. So it really depends on what you're looking for. If you're looking for something now, a guy like Curtis Samuel does seem like a better bet because now he's getting a lot of targets.
Yeah, and that's what I was looking at when I was looking at wide receivers. I was looking at Robbie Anderson, who had a good game in Carolina, but I was happier that he got 8 targets. How about Dan? Your Donovan Peoples-Jones got 11 targets in Cleveland, and he only caught 6 of them, but I'm not looking at performance necessarily in terms of fantasy production. I'm looking at who these quarterbacks are comfortable throwing the ball to, and those are the ones I want to get. So, that's why Rex Burkhead getting 8 targets out of the backfield is enormous in PPR and in full point and half point PPR leagues. So there are some wide receivers. I actually like Jarvis Landry for this season in redraft leagues because he got 9 targets. If Michael Thomas is playing that well, and it seems like he's coming back, you have Chris Olave and you have Jarvis Landry. Like Landry could find himself open a lot of the time, and it seems like Winston is already comfortable throwing to him. So I like, when I'm talking about wide receivers and tight ends, I'm not necessarily looking at the overall production in week 1. I'm looking at targets.
Yeah, I mean, Michael Thomas, he can't get open. His speed is not there. He's not as fast as he used to be. He can't get open at all. I think he only had like 4 targets. I know he had 2 touchdowns. I think they were kind of fluky. That's me coming from me. I think it's some fluke with him, Michael Thomas. I know people. I drafted him just knowing that maybe he'll bounce back. But again, I'm not a big Michael Thomas believer right now, even though he had a good week.
But if he's Winston's favorite red zone target, I'll take 4 targets and 2 touchdowns and 28 yards every week.
Yeah, he's just slow, and it's just there's so many problems with Thomas. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, but Kasey makes a good point. Wide receiver is also a position that's changing, where you get some of these red zone guys who just don't get any targets.
Tremendous.
Right. But the red zone targets they get are so valuable. So really interesting stuff. Let's move to tight end.
Really quick, Joshua Palmer, Keenan Allen will probably not play for the couple weeks.
Good point.
I don't know for sure. I'll know more on Thursday.
Hamstring sounds
Joshua
like
Palmer could get a lot of targets.
And Ross, I wanted to ask you, T. Higgins left with a concussion. Do you think he's going to play next week? Because I
don't think he'll play either.
Tyler Boyd becomes exponentially more valuable.
Tyler Boyd, I drafted him in a lot of leagues just for that reason, because he'll come in and get a lot of catches. I mean, so yes, and Tyler Boyd had a touchdown too. So yes, I think some of these guys that are hurt, like T. Higgins concussion, they're not going to risk it on the first part of the season. There's no way. And especially they're playing Dallas, and they're already like, the Bengals are a 7-point favorite right now in Dallas.
Yeah, how would
starting Cooper Rush?
Cooper Rush. I just want to point out that, I mean, I'm a Giants fan, so I'm NFC East, and everybody in the NFC East except Cowboys hate the Cowboys. So I am enjoying a little bit the misery they're going through. I don't own any of them in fantasy. Every other team in the East is 1-0. They're 0-1. I take the Schadenfreude sort of thing I'm experiencing because of the Dallas Cowboy fan base is just wonderful.
Oh, how about those Cowboys? I mean, I agree. Jerry Jones.
They might be the worst team with Cooper Rush at quarterback, and this is no knock on him, but I guess it is. But he's still an NFL quarterback, so he's one of the 50 best quarterbacks in the world. They might be the worst team in the NFL without Dak Prescott.
Well, let me talk about Cooper Rush on paper. Is probably one of the worst, bottom third worst backup quarterbacks in the league. True or false, Kasey Scheinfeld?
I don't know his numbers. I just know that the Cowboys are bad without him.
Bottom third. He's a bottom third backup quarterback.
I mean, and with all due respect to McCarthy, like how does the game plan include Noah Brown, the wide receiver, getting 9 targets, making CeeDee Lamb look pedestrian at best, and only giving Tony Pollard 2 targets in the passing game? Like, that was the worst game calling ever.
Well, again, CeeDee like a true 11 targets. I think 4 receptions. That was his whole. That's what he did. And
oh my God. It's not like the Cowboys looked good before Prescott got hurt.
This is fun to see the vitriol coming from the Giants fan towards the Cowboys.
I love it.
I'm just enjoying the entire thing.
There is no more arrogant fan base than the Cowboys.
I love watching Dallas explode too. They were so cocky beginning of the season too. Jerry Jones was on ESPN talking how great his team is. Yeah. And I was just sitting there like shaking my head. You shouldn't be doing this.
The truth is, I'm a Dak Prescott fan. I like the kid. I love how he's spoken about mental health and made it a kind of a point to use his platform for that. So there is no disrespect to the Cowboys themselves, other than Jerry Jones.
I like that fan base. I felt bad for him about his brother and the whole.
Yeah, the fan base though has always been horrible. So this is fun.
All right, now we've got a question coming in about the Cowboys. Eric Alvarez has asked: Cowboys trade for Jimmy G. Very interesting idea. I'm sure lots of people have been thinking about the thing. Jimmy G is the number one quarterback you could trade for, and the Cowboys sure need somebody. So
I mean, I think that's why the Niners
or Sam Darnold. But my question is this: how quickly can a quarterback, even as experienced and successful as Garoppolo in the past, pick up an entirely new offense and develop chemistry with the receivers if he didn't even have any preseason with them? That's always my concern. I don't remember, and if anybody can point out examples of a quarterback being traded mid-season and immediately making the team better.
Well, the thing is this: Trey Lance isn't really tearing it up. So he could be second string very soon, and Garoppolo could be in there as the starter. So I don't think the Niners are going to trade anything until Lance shows any promise. I mean, he looked horrible last week.
Maybe the Packers continue to play terribly and Aaron Rodgers gets reunited with Mike McCarthy in Dallas because he'll kind of know the offense already.
Wow.
I guess. But like you said, it's like you got to learn the playbook. And
Eric Alvarez points out he did it with San Francisco when he came over from the Patriots. But
yeah, he had a whole summer to learn it.
I thought he had the whole preseason with him.
The whole summer.
That maybe is the distinction here. But I agree with Ross. I don't think the 49ers are going to trade Jimmy G because they see they're in a vulnerable position. They're a team that can compete. And meanwhile, do you really think the 49ers are going to help the Cowboys? I don't see that.
Right. The rivalry there. And Alvarez, to Eric's defense, Jimmy G coming in not knowing the playbook might still be better than Cooper Rush.
I think Dr. Dan Ratner is better than Cooper Rush right now, but that's my opinion.
Them's are fighting words. Cooper, I apologize on behalf of Ross. And at the same time, Ross, I appreciate that you are not underestimating my skills. Oh, you know what? I was saying this recently. If there was one skill I would have as an NFL quarterback, it would be my release time. I would get rid of the ball very quickly.
Yeah.
I'm not taking any sacks.
Or maybe even Uncle Rico, I think, would be better than Cooper Rush.
I would not try to extend. There would be no attempt to extend the play by us.
No, Uncle Rico, I think, probably has better moves and more quick with the release.
Listen, Dallas, if you want a quarterback who will take literally 0 sacks, it is me. How many interceptions I might throw, I don't know. There'll be a lot of 3 and outs. There will be no sacks. All right, guys, let's move to tight end. There was a great segue about maybe 10 minutes ago, but it's not.
It's past.
It was when you were talking about T. Higgins, and I was saying, my favorite tight end to pick up is Hayden Hurst of Cincinnati. I think that I was going to say he's probably my top tight end pickup, although Taysom Hill. We got to talk Taysom Hill.
What do you do with him? If he comes in and plays quarterback a little bit and gets those stats and gets those running yards too, I mean,
does anybody know how many snaps he played at tight end?
Dr. Dan Ratner will find out right now.
I will try to find out.
But long story short, he's like a unicorn. I'm not quite sure what you do. If you need a tight end, it's not a bad idea to pick him up. Maybe he'll get a rushing touchdown, or maybe he'll get a throwing touchdown. I don't know. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I mean, I have him in a couple leagues, and I didn't start him, but I did. It was a deep roster league, and I did draft him. But long story short, I don't know. The guy that's going to get a lot of pickups, and I'm telling you, don't pick him up, is O.J. Howard. He had 2 touchdowns. He's not going to do that every week. He plays in Houston.
He only had 2 targets.
He only had 2 targets, 2 touchdowns. Folks, this is called a delusional touchdowns. I mean, this is not going to happen every week. There's no way. So I'd rather have my guy's Robert Tonyan. I mean, I've been saying his name throughout the past 2 months. I'm saying this is Aaron Rodgers' favorite target before he got hurt. I mean, he loves this guy. And he's healthy. He's playing. He had some receptions. I think he'll get the ball more when the season goes on. But Robert Tunyon.
Yeah.
You say onion, I say potato. But long story short, I like Tunyon a lot. I like him a lot, and I think he'll pick up the no.
Again, if I'm looking at targets, Joe Flacco, who's right now the starting quarterback for the New York Jets, likes Tyler Conklin. He gave him 7 targets, 4 receptions, caught a touchdown. Look, tight end is miserably thin after the top 3 or 4, and maybe after the top 3 with Kittle being injured all the time. I've owned Tyler Higbee in a couple leagues for years. He got 11 targets, but don't let that fool you. I'm not sure he catches very well because it looks like he has stubs for hands sometimes when he's trying to catch a football. So he seems to get open, and he'll have a big game every 4 or 5 games, but then he'll have a game like he had that night where, what was it? He had 11 targets and only 5 receptions, and they counted 4 of the incompletions as just drops. So he dropped almost as many passes as he caught. So he's somebody who's going to get a lot of volume, but he's going to be frustrating
I agree. And
hands of stone.
Somebody that was like, I was high on beginning of the season, and right now I have to apologize because this is a big goof that I had. Kyle Pitts for Atlanta was a big. Hopefully he'll pick it up, but I was.
You know how Ross talked at the beginning about the overreactions, the most dramatic responses.
I feel maybe I picked the wrong guy.
Overreaction, Ross.
I'm like,
Kyle Pitts will be fine.
We'll see what happens.
If anybody out there wants to drop him or trade him, I'm happy to listen.
There he is.
All right, now listen. There are a couple things we have to highlight. First of all, Ross said the phrase, you say onion, I say potato.
That was on purpose.
I know it was, but it was amazing, so I just wanted to give you a shout out. We also have a comment. We have a comment coming in. Can I bring in the comment? Olivia's and Alley Boy 760 says Vinny Testaverde is being called by the Cowboys.
Oh, nice.
That's amazing.
I like
Listen, I'm wearing a Bernie Kosar shirt, and let's all remember he ended his career downing the Super Bowl for the Cowboys. That was not how the Browns wanted to see that end. Meanwhile, this comment came in originally with a typo that must be read. Instead of calling him Vinny Testaverde, it was called Bonnie Testaverde. It just had to be said. All right, guys. I want to jump back to Taysom Hill, though, because, listen, there's so many bad options at tight end. Somebody should be owning Taysom Hill in virtually every league because his upside is just way too plausible at a position that's that thin. I mean, I owned him and did not start him in game 1, and that makes sense. And look, I'll start him in game 2, and could he lay a goose egg? Absolutely, 100%. But I really think if you have room on your roster, he is a priority add. Hayden Hurst is the guy that I'd go to just for your average tight end, who I think is in a good spot. I don't disagree with Robert Tonyan. Tyler Higbee, I agree with the comments on him as well. Anybody else to add, guys, before we move on? We're going to
Gerald Everett of the Chargers. Gerald Everett of the Chargers. He had 54 yards and a touchdown. I think I forgot how many targets, but I think he had
4 targets, 3 receptions.
4 targets. So, I mean, again, the Chargers love using the tight end, and I feel with their quarterback Herbert, I feel it's not a bad pickup if you need a tight end. There's a lot of worst options out there. But I like,
especially if Keenan Allen's hurt.
I'll pick him. I'll try to pick him up in a few leagues. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, also I think Donald Parham on the Chargers. I think he's going to have more of a role there. So I don't love that long term, but. Not bad in the short term, certainly. Guys, let's move. We're going to move to defenses, which, of course, is mostly determined by matchups or people who picked a defense in Week 7. If you picked a defense in Week 7, you're set, but you shouldn't have done it, as we all know. So, guys, let's talk about the matchups this week. Who are some favorable matchups that you take as your defense? Kasey, we'll start with you.
Your Cleveland Browns are going against the Jets. I think that would be
anybody against the Jets.
The number one pickup this week for defenses. They're only 27% owned. Myles Garrett can get after the quarterback, as we have seen. As long as he leaves his helmet on or doesn't take the other player's helmet off and swing it at him, he'll stay on the field throughout the game. That can wreak havoc. So that's probably, to me, the top defense to pick up this week. That's under 60%.
Well, I have to do this, Ross. My next pickup would be Kasey's New York Giants. How often does that happen?
I like it.
Kasey's New York Giants.
Who are they playing?
They're playing at home, and they're playing Carolina. Carolina looked very, very stagnant. I know everybody's like, oh, C-Mac's on that team. Well, first of all, I don't trust C-Mac to finish a game very much. Secondly, I like Baker Mayfield. I actually have a Cleveland Baker Mayfield jersey in the background here to confuse everybody.
The most ridiculous stat from that Cleveland Carolina game, Christian McCaffrey only had one target in the passing game in the first 3 quarters.
Yeah.
You have the best receiving back in the world, and you throw it to him. He ended up with 5 targets because they threw him 4 in the last 3 minutes of the game. But up until that point, they only threw him 1 ball.
Yep. Well, this is one of the problems. Baker Mayfield, he sometimes does that. He's not
wants to
the
go
way
long.
you'd expect, and he holds the ball too long. That's why they should bring in me. I'll get rid of the ball. I may go to the other team, but I'll get rid of the ball. Meanwhile, I checked on this stat. Taysom Hill was on for 22 snaps. That's 35% of the time. That's not actually that bad for a backup tight end who may run out of the Wildcat and score you touchdowns. For a tight end.
I know we want to give Ross the next one, but since we're playing the share the love game, ironically, the third best defense probably to pick up this week is Ross's Cincinnati Bengals. And why is that, Ross?
Because they're playing the Dallas Cowboys, and Cooper Rush will probably have, 4 picks, 5 picks.
Right. I mean, come on.
And the Bengals defense is
an angry Bengals team going against a backup quarterback.
Oh, it's going to be fun because the Bengals are going to feast off him. It's going to be a turnover machine, I believe, crossing my fingers. But Cincinnati, for me, was my number one to pick up defense this week just because of the matchup. I also like Pittsburgh. I know TJ Watt is hurt. I know he's not playing, but I like Pittsburgh's matchup, and I think their defense plays really well as a team. I know they'll be missing TJ Watt, but I don't think that it's going to affect them that much. I think their defense is just really good.
I like to play a defense against a team that is run by a defensive coordinator. That seems like not a bad pick. All right, we're gonna give kickers a tiny little bit of love. Usually we don't spend too much time on them.
How about your rookie
interviewing?
How about your Cleveland Brown kicker? Tell us what happened with him over the weekend.
Okay, so Cade York, I'll tell you it from my perspective. I was on a plane in Chicago, and the Browns had blown a lead, and it looked like we were going to lose by 1 on a last-second field goal, as is pretty much happens every week. We've lost 17 openers in a row. The last time we won an opener was 2004. And, for a while we weren't winning openers because there was no team there, but actually that was almost preferable. And so Cade York comes on for a 60-yard field goal. I didn't get to see it because I was on the plane, but I did. I was on the plane with a bunch of Cleveland fans, and I hear Cade York just drilled a 60-yard field goal to win the game. So I'm looking at it, and I will give you my honest Browns fan reaction. We're up 26-24 with 8 seconds left, and I was thinking, we could lose this.
Oh, God, I hope we win.
We can still lose this. But Cade York has quite a leg, and that's why they drafted him as early as they... Well, listen, there are 2 reasons they drafted him as early as they did. He's got a huge leg that could make a big, big difference in the NFL, and we have had terrible kicking games for so long, partly because we keep putting ourselves in bad positions. This time, I was telling Ross, I was telling Kasey this before we came on. Kasey and I are Giants and Browns fans. We got 2 wins by a total of 2 points.
I know.
3 points.
3 points. You won by 2.
I forgot we won by 2.
No, I mean, the Cleveland game, I watched him kick that. I mean, this guy has like ice in his veins. I mean, it was unbelievable. He kicked a 60-yard field goal as a rookie, first game in the NFL to win the game.
Well, not only that, but he did it for the Browns. That really takes ice in your veins.
It was an away game. It wasn't like they're in Cleveland. The crowd was going crazy trying to get him to miss. It didn't work. No, it was a fun game to watch. And this kid, Cade York, he's the real deal.
Anybody to add at kicker? Cade York is the whole thing.
Well, yeah, it's hard to top him, but Brandon McManus of Denver is going against Houston next week. He's only 48% owned. He's got a big leg. He's pretty consistent, reliable. I don't rank kickers. I got to be honest. So when you ask, I quickly looked at who's kicking next week because that's how I base even drafting or waiver wire kickers. I don't even think you drafted a kicker.
I did
in our draft. You waited a week and then dropped a couple people and picked them up.
Trick.
I absolutely didn't. But
the kicker I love this season is Jason Sanders of Miami. I feel Miami's offense is really good. I feel Tua's going to have problems getting in the end zone sometimes. So I like Jason kicking those field goals just because I feel they'll get down to the red zone. I feel he'll Tua might fail a little bit down there. So that's why I like Jason Sanders.
And I just don't like kickers in general. I don't mean as people, but I mean as fantasy football players. I wish we could abolish them, and my apologies to them if that insults them.
But yeah, I mean, the kickers there's so many good kickers in the NFL. I mean, look at Koo for Atlanta. He was money. He was unbelievable this week. I don't know if you guys saw the highlights, but he was kicking like 55, 50 yard field goals.
Yep. Well, and then there's Ryan Suckup who plays for Tampa Bay. I like a kicker like him because they're usually going to be playing with the lead a lot of the time.
I like the name too. Stop being a suck up, Kasey.
Stop being a suck up, Ryan. All right, guys. That is our waiver wire show for this week. We're going to be doing this every week at this same time. It's 8:15 p.m. Eastern, 5:15 p.m. Pacific. Now, of course, we'll try to keep it nice and short because you want to watch your Monday Night Football game, but we want to get you the information. The waiver wire is incredibly important. We know it is. You're going to have time to pick up your players. If you need to put in your claims, though, you need to know who you're picking up in advance. So hopefully we have done a good job bringing that to you. If you haven't already, click subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, and put your comments below. We love to hear from you. We love to discuss this all with you. Thanks for joining us, Eric, Olivia's and Ellie Boy 760, and anyone else who's watching. Thank you so much.